Hey, Lynn.
Hey, Yakira, how you doing?
I'm good. I
Oh,
like your background.
oh, thank you. Yes, Jared Collette made it for me. He's a member of our advisory board, and he's the senior director of ad operations at Major League Fishing. For those of you who may not know Jared, um, Yakira, so when was Pub Forum Boston? About 2 weeks ago, I'd
About two
say.
weeks ago. Yep.
Yeah. So last week I was had time to decompress. So now we're ready to talk to folks about like what we thought of Publisher Forum Boston, what we came away with, right? Yeah. So take it away.
Well, first, we cannot start without mentioning your amazing opening, which was a wrap. I mean, something I know I didn't expect. You did give us a hint. You did a play on "They Not Like Us." What was that creative process like for you? I mean, we generally never see those types of openings at our types of conferences.
Right. And it's funny because recently I was on TikTok or Instagram or one of them, and there was this rap opening of a tech conference. I forgot which one it was, but it's a major expo. I can't believe I can't remember which one it was. And people were like, oh, this is how tech conferences open now. And it was like break dancing, rapping, all this kind of stuff. But for us in ad tech, yeah, I'm sure no one has ever seen an opening like mine before. A play on, like you said, Kendrick Lamar's They Not Like Us. And I really thought about how ad ops, people always see it as the backroom operations, but it's coming out into the front room more and more as they are having to be more strategic. And really, it is a discipline and a practice and a job that is really like no other job in digital media. So that was the first thing, like me linking up, like this is a good idea. And then sitting down with the good old Claude.ai and good old Chat GPT and telling it, prompting it on, these are Kendrick Lamar's lyrics. I'm trying to, here's some stuff that's going on at AdMonsters Publisher Hall in Boston. And I want to, work some of these themes into this rap. And, I worked with the AI. The original was terrible. It was terrible. It was not on beat at all. And then eventually, myself editing it afterward, I came away with something. I do have to say now, after the fact, I did forget some words. And my cadence was a little off. I got to be honest here. But, I saw a video of it. It looks like I still killed it, regardless. Um, Yakira, what did you think of my opening? And thinking you've been to a lot of tech conferences. You've been to Possible, IAB, Can. You've been to a lot of conferences. What did you think of that as an opening?
I thought it was very unorthodox in a good way. I loved it. I thought it was very creative. You mentioned how your cadence was a little off. Nobody noticed that. So, that's definitely a you thing. Like we could be a little bit hard on ourselves. But yeah, I loved it. I'm excited to see what you have in store for Scottsdale.
I don't know if I can top that. I mean, really, it's funny though. Scott Messer posted it on X, and he was like, conferences, ad tech conferences take notice. AdMonsters came with the dope cold opener. I'm paraphrasing him, of course. He didn't say it that way, but he said that in a way. So it was, although I was kind of like embarrassing. I saw a couple of people post it, and they had a good time. So but then we shifted gears after my opening immediately. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it was like a flip of a switch. Claire got up there and she really talked about how ad operations and technology is like really being revolutionized. So she got very serious really quick, talking about disinformation, mention of certain vendors. But what were your thoughts on Claire's session?
For me, the thing about Claire's session, and it's funny when I introduced she and Andrew Bird, who was our news editor, was that I said she's going to check you. And she did in many ways because she talked about the opaque nature of programmatic transactions and just stuff like ad placements in general. Advertisers are not really knowing where their ads are being placed. Um, Uh, people are putting some comments in here making me laugh. Sorry. Thank you, Becky. Thank you, Jared. So it to me, it was like eye opening in the sense of advertisers and publishers. There's a lot that neither groups really know, and because of the way, like it's some kind of like hocus pocus or abracadabra, black box kind of thing happening behind the scenes. Publishers don't know what ads are coming to them. Advertisers don't know where their ads are being placed. That's why, so many advertisers are buying MFA sites and they don't even know it. They're not even aware of it half the time. So to me, that was really interesting. Also, the disinformation aspect that she talked about. And there's a lot that publishers can even do to stop it. Yakira, I think you wanted to talk a little bit about that transparency aspect, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, but before we get into that, I wanted to get into how one thing I learned from Claire's session is I didn't know that disinformation is sometimes, funded through ad tech and advertisers. So that was just a little crazy for me to find out. But yeah, we definitely had a big theme around data and how publishers can enhance their data technologies, and improve them to really survive the shifts we're seeing. You and I talked about before how our ecosystem is pretty much like a black box. Like nobody, no matter how many conferences and articles we read or conferences we go to, people we talk to, many don't know what others are doing in the industry. So another common theme that I picked up from Publisher Forum was the importance of transparency and collaboration.
Yeah, I would say that came across almost in every session, right? Don't you think so? I think, yeah, two main sessions probably were on the main stage, the curation session and the premium publisher shift. But where else? We heard it a couple of other places. I think you were telling me about that when we talked about it yesterday or a couple of days ago when I got back.
Yeah. So once again, it came up in a couple sessions. Jana mentioned it in her session when she talked about, one of her takeaways was to continue to include everyone in the conversation. And that's how we will combat a lot of these issues we're seeing as an industry. Jeff from Future also talked about the importance of collaborating with advertisers. Both Roxanne and Addie spoke about how there's a lack of transparency and also a different, it is difficult to get verification vendors to address misclassifications and reporting discrepancies. So, again, it all circles back to people talking to each other. That was also a theme in the ops to sales session. That was, workshop. That was like the main theme: communication and education.
Yeah, I heard that a lot too. Our publisher just pointed out in the comments, and I think this is something great to highlight, that Claire's keynote was even more eye-opening considering the recent news of X of all people. Sorry, excuse me. Something
Okay.
stuck in my throat. No, X of all people suing the World Federation of Advertising, right? Which is home to GARM. And now GARM is disbanded. Like, this is crazy. It's like GARM is the thing that, I don't know if you remember, a couple of pub forums ago, we had Maria Breza from Spotify who was talking about using GARM as the backbone of building a brand safety practice within a publisher's operation. So to hear this now, that GARM is X finito, not to keep saying X so many times, it's Claire's keynote really hit home on that. So what are some other things that you came away from the conference with?
It was really interesting to learn about deal curation, just from all the conversations that I do have in the industry, all the events I go to, all the writing I do. It's not something that I hear about a lot. So I think Scott Messer, he really took us there and brought it home. And then it was also nice to hear what Armando and Alex are dealing with at their companies. I also like the segue from the deal curation conversation, it segued nicely into the premium publisher shift convo, because towards the end of Armando and Alex's interview, you know, they were kind of talking about the difficulties that they see as a minority owned publisher. And that's pretty much what was discussed in the premium publisher shift session as well.
Right, right. I mean, for me, the biggest theme that came away from me is the conference theme was about, revenue, right? It was about ramping up your revenue for the rest of 2024 and into 2025. And it was very interesting that while our November conference is about amplifying your audience, a lot of what came away from the ramping up your revenue was about audience. It's like audience is going to be the key driver to ramping up your revenue, investing in your audience. And that to me kind of dovetails with our ramping up your revenue, digital publishers reveal key growth strategies, uh, uh, Publisher Pulse report that we put out recently, where in that report, we saw that 71% of publishers are investing in new tools and technologies to drive their revenue growth, with the most invested in tool being audience segmentation, and then at 65%, followed by identity resolution at 50%, and then AI-driven / advanced analytics platforms at 40%. So it seems like the strategy for growing your revenue right now is really counting on your audience, getting to know that audience better, understanding them better. As we've seen, contextual, oftentimes I've been devil's advocate when people talk about contextual, and I often say, I'm always like, does it scale? Does it scale? Does it scale? Well, Meredith has proven that it scales, right? I don't know how many people saw my article last week where I talked about Meredith's Decipher, but also wrapped up a lot of our conversations at Pub Forum that tied into what's happening with Decipher. The Decipher tool has propelled Dotdash's increase in digital ad revenue at 12%. So cookieless targeting does scale. And definitely that's for a big publisher. But one thing I came away from, I had a data-driven strategy session with Patrick McCarthy from Dotdash and what's Jessie Waldell from Dow Jones. I almost forgot her first name there. And both of them said for small publishers, it's about even just starting small, testing iteratively, and that you can really come with a lot in your data-driven strategies, and that contextual can be the future as first-party data is really starting to take the place of everything else, because we don't know what's happening with cookies. People may choose to opt out entirely. We don't know if it's an opt-in tool or an opt-out tool. We don't know what's going to happen there. So there's so many what ifs. And so all the people who are testing and finding that first-party data and contextual is working, even in a brand safety, brand suitability context, I think that is, for me, that was the biggest takeaway. And because at so many other pub forums before, we heard publishers saying, I'm not testing IDs. I'm not getting my first party data together. I'm waiting to see what happens. Well, guess what? You can't wait and see anymore. It's here. It's time. I'm sorry. I took a lot of time there. What do you have to add?
I mean, that was great. Yeah. I mean, when you mentioned Decipher, I was thinking about how Future has their first party data platform, Aperture. And then Jana mentioned the Washington Post, their first party data platform, Convergence. And then also Scott Messer talked about how, deal curation does help to create a less leaky data sharing environment. So that was my takeaway. Very data heavy. To really refine our data, we have to establish more transparency and collaborate, have conversations. And yeah, one thing we didn't really get into, brand safety. Loosely, I'll say I really did enjoy Jana's, session. But a recent report by Resonate, it was a 2024 Consumer Fall Trends report, said that most consumers are choosing YouTube for their news over the New York Times, the Washington Post, and another news magazine. I can't remember. So it's just like they kind of challenged her perspective a little bit. So it's just interesting to see where things go.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I mean, you know what's funny? I'm a New York Times subscriber. I just stopped getting print a little while ago. Um, But I do have to say, I probably, and I'm not even the right generation, but I probably use YouTube for everything more than anything else, whereas someone like my teenager uses TikTok for everything. So I think it's going to be really interesting for us to see also how publishers get better at leveraging social media as well, to know their audience better. But also, I think like getting in the business of, I hate to say it, um, kind of like sharing your audience with others, right? For those who are not big publishers, so like you talk about deal curation, or you talk about data co-ops, or even data clean rooms. I think all of these things about sharing your data, even some publishers are going to be selling their data, right? They're going to be licensing content, licensing audiences. It's going to be really interesting to see how all of this shakes out. Yeah.
For sure. I love to see where we will be as an industry come January, you know.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, if you're ready to talk about Scottsdale, I have some, speakers that we already have lined up. Let me add them here. So first off, we have Emery Downing Hall, who's going to be a keynote. He will be talking about balancing organizational and personal growth as a publisher. I think that's going to be very, very interesting. We also will have Anna Milicevic, who is from Sparrow. She's an advisor in the industry, works across the industry. She will be talking about the future of digital media audiences. So that is going to bring us full circle from where we left off with at Boston. Then we also have Justin Wall, who will be getting into the tech nitty gritty about mastering your ad tech stack. So I'm really looking forward to that. And also Aki Garrett from Revolt, who Yakira, he's probably going to be talking about something in the CTV space. Um,
Yeah, yep. I think
okay, all right, all
CTV
right.
and small publishers. That's all I'm gonna give.
Okay, it's a secret. You got to register and get there to hear the rest of who's coming and who'll be speaking. Check out for announcements from us coming up about some more of the speakers who will be coming to Scottsdale. All right, Yakira, you ready to close out?
Yeah, so definitely register and get your tickets to Scottsdale. We would love to see you there. And that's all I have.
All right, all right. Thank you everyone for checking in, and we'll see you in Scottsdale.
Bye.